At the beginning of this year, I set a goal for myself to read 50 books in 1 year. Now, I absolutely did not complete that goal, but I'm gonna make this video anyways. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Maddie. Have I ever said welcome back to my channel before? Ooh, something weird just happened. Welcome to a very Frankenstein version of my living room. I kind of hate when I have like a vision of what I want something to look like. Like I was like, oh, wouldn't it be so cute if I just pulled my little leather couch over in front of the book stack and the Christmas tree and I can put on the fake fire. Like we can have it all little ambiance going. It'll be super cute. But now I'm just anxious because my apartment's all unorganized now. So let's get to talking about these books, shall we? I've always been a fan of writing, but being such a big reader is really something kind of new for me in my life. Not that I was ever anti-books. I read a lot as a kid, and then I just sort of gradually stopped the older that I got. I think school kind of made me hate reading, which I think is the case for a lot of people. I actually minored in creative writing in college, not that anyone gives a fuck. But I've always loved writing. I've loved poetry, and creating has been a regular part of my life. But reading and consuming like tons and tons of books is a newer hobby of mine. So today I want to rank all of the books that I read from worst to best and talk a little bit of shit. I'm going to tell you which books I think you should absolutely skip and which books I think are winners, especially if you're someone who's just trying to get back into the habit of reading. I'll point out to you what books I think could suck you into the habit of reading if that's something that you want to develop in the next year. Before we get into ranking what I've been reading this year, let's introduce today's sponsor, which is our friends over at Beis. If you have a friend or family member or yourself that is a professional overpacker, boy, do I have a gift idea for you. Beis designs bags, luggage, and accessories to help you travel effortlessly, but also very fashionably at the same time. This is my weekender bag from Beis, which I have been totally obsessed with. This bag is literally the perfect size for a quick little weekend getaway. You can fit a lot in here, but also you're not, packing a 50-pound suitcase for a weekend trip, which don't look at me. I'm not saying I've done it, but I'm also not saying that I haven't done it. Beis has really thought of everything that you could ever want in a piece of luggage with 360-degree gliding wheels, a cushioned handle, and built-in weight indicator on their larger bags, and all of the interior pockets you need to keep yourself organized. All of their luggage comes in multiple sizes and colors, so you can find yourself a perfect little piece of luggage to match you and your airport fits. It's important. Don't you ever underestimate the importance of an airport fit, baby. And for viewers of my channel, Beis is offering 15% off your first purchase when you go to beistravel.com/partylikeMaddie. That's BEIS travel.com/partylikeMaddie for 15% off your first purchase. So if you or someone you love is in the market for some new super cute luggage, here's your opportunity to get some. All the links are gonna be listed in the description down below, and thank you again to Beis for sponsoring today's video. So before I even get into ranking the books from worst to best, I'm going to tell you the 2 books that I did not finish this year. First of which might be a little controversial, but I don't care because I did not like it. And it's The Woman Destroyed by Simone de Beauvoir. This book was on every single person's like hot girl reading lists. Listen, I love stories about women. I love stories about difficult women. This was boring to me. I'm sorry. So I read the first 60 pages, and the reason I ended up putting it down is because I felt like this book was giving me nothing. It was going nowhere, the plot wasn't progressing, and I found the story a little boring. Maybe it was also the dynamic that I wasn't interested in. It was a mother and wife like arguing with her husband about a conflict they were having with their son. And I just couldn't get myself to care about it. I thought it was kind of boring. So I ended up putting this one down because it took me an entire month to read those 60 pages, and it really set me back on my reading goal for the year. This is what I was reading the entire month of April. What a fucking waste. Okay, next book I did not finish was one that I read in my reading smut for an entire month video back in the summer, and this is The Unrequited by Saffron A. Kent. This book was corny as fuck. I talk more about it in the smut video, so I'm not going to go too into depth on this one, but I will read to you the very line that made me put down this book and say, shut the fuck up, I'm not reading this bullshit. It said, "My heart has forgotten its loneliness and is invested in this dark stranger now. I study him from top to bottom. A leather jacket hangs from his forearm. He's wearing a crisp white shirt and blue jeans and, oh my God, he's wearing a white shirt and blue jeans. He's dressed like my favorite song, Blue Jeans by Lana Del Rey." That is so fucking corny. Stupid. You're telling me that someone didn't write this in the depths, in the ass crack of Tumblr in the year 2013. You're telling me that someone wrote this now and that someone recommended it to me? All right, so now we've got into the books that I actually did read top to bottom, ranking each of those. I'll go into some of them in depth. Others I'm just going to rank for you. Otherwise, we'd be here all day. I have too many words to say. With peace and love, I'm going to shut the fuck up for some of these. But this worst book, baby, I'm not going to shut the fuck up about, because it was the worst book that I read all year. I was deep in the booktube, deep in the book talk this summer. I was trying to pull these recommendations, find like unique, interesting books to read, books I hadn't seen recommended before. And I came across this book, which was recommended by a few different booktubers and book talkers that I like. Book talkers. That sounds so fucking weird, does it not? Book talkers. Okay, stop. And that book is This Is Pleasure by Mary Gateskill. This book is very tiny. It's very short. It's 84 pages. I read this in one sitting, and the second I was done with it, I wished that I never started it in the first place. I am truly so aggressively uninterested in devil's advocate bullshit when it comes to matters like sexual assault and the Me Too movement, and that's what this book is. What the fuck? The whole book is like, well, what if it's complicated for him? What if he just likes flirting with his employees? Shut the fuck up. Ugh. Dumb, stupid, would not recommend this book to literally anyone. Not even worth it to hate read. It's that bad. It's just stupid. Next up at number 24, I've got Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino. Now, this book is low down on the list, but it's not because I didn't like this book. I actually think that Gia is a really talented writer, and there were a lot of interesting essays in this book that I enjoyed. However, I believe this book came out in 2019, so reading it at the beginning of 2022, I felt like, oh, these are essays about ideas and arguments that I've already heard 1,000 times over. These essays are interesting, but they're covering topics that are very highly saturated, especially if you're someone that consumes a lot of media, a lot of commentary media. Like, for example, there was an entire essay on here on Fyre Festival. Now, I don't know about you, but I've consumed enough content about Fyre Festival to last me a lifetime. I don't really need to read another think piece dissecting different aspects of Fyre Fest. I think I've heard it all. And that's how I felt a lot while reading this book. I probably would have felt differently if I read it in 2019 or even 2020 when it was published. I just felt like I had already heard a lot of the analysis that was already in here. However, I loved the personal essays in here and the stuff that focused more on Gia's life. I wished there was more of that because it does feel a little bit more evergreen. In 23rd, we have A Sport and a Pastime by James Salter. This was another smut book that I read this summer. It was fine. In 22nd place, I have The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. I know a lot of people love this book. They love the characters, they're unique, the story's interesting, it's different than a lot of these romance with a little bit of smut books are usually like. And usually half the appeal of these books is how corny they are. Like, you're not looking for the next literary masterpiece when you're picking up a book with a cover like this that is titled The Kiss Quotient. I thought that it was going to be kind of gross, kind of stupid, but fun and sexy and romantic. And it was just a little bit too sophomore in high school for me. Sorry. In 21st place, I've got Dear Boy by Emily Berry. This collection was just forgettable to me. It did not elicit any type of emotion out of me. And so there are poetry books that I read this year that I actively was like fired up about and was like, fuck this guy, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I still liked books like that where I was fired up in a negative way better than this, which just made me feel absolutely nothing at all. In 20th place, I have Little Birds by Anai Nin. Looking back on this, I don't know if I can tell you what any of the stories were about. I don't remember them. So clearly I didn't like it that much. In 19th place, I have Love is a Dog from Hell by Charles Bukowski. This is the book that I was talking about earlier. Charles Bukowski's a fucking douchebag. Like, he's just the fucking worst. I think he's cynical, self-centered, and sexist, and at times overly vulgar without real purpose behind being that way. With that being said, I do think he's a talented writer, and I do understand why a lot of his poetry is praised. There were a lot of poems in here that I really liked. There were a lot of poems in here that I really didn't like. Not for lack of poetic skill or expertise. Clearly he knows what the fuck he's doing. Just because I fucking hate this guy. He's the worst. However, I am someone that really enjoys consuming art and media from people that I disagree with. I like having a strong reaction to the things that I read, whether it is a strong good reaction or a strong bad reaction. This guy's fucking talented and he makes me feel things. I'm angry. I think he's an asshole, but I have a lot to say. It's evoking a lot out of me, and for that, I like this. I am such a romantic. I see the world in a very different way than someone like Charles Bukowski does. I really don't like the way that he sees the world. I hate the way that he writes about women and sex. I just find it so off-putting. I hate it so much. And yeah, I do think a lot of his work is vulgar without real purpose. However, with all of that being said, I do kind of love that his writing lacks a certain pretentiousness that is usually present in poetry. So as much as I hate this guy, I respect the hustle. So there it is. In 18th place, I have Emmanuel by Emmanuel Arson. This is the book that I read inside of a pool when Frankie Jonas was sitting right next to me. Weird vibes. The book is like covered in water still because yeah, I was reading it in a pool next to the bonus Jonas. So like this book is like it's an artifact to me, right? In 17th place, I have Just Kids by Patti Smith. I felt kind of in the middle about this one. There were a lot of aspects of this book that I really liked and thought were very sweet. The relationship between Patty and Robert is very sweet and endearing and complicated, and it's fun to read about. However, I think there were some aspects of this story that I found myself kind of rolling my eyes at. And sorry if that's not an in-depth enough review for you. In 16th place, I have Time as a Mother by Ocean Vuong. Ocean is one of my favorite writers. I read 3 of his books this year. I'm going to talk about the other 2 a little bit later on. This was great. It wasn't my favorite of the other books I've read of his. He is a very talented poet, a very talented writer in general. His word choice and ability to paint an entire world within just a few lines is really spectacular. Nothing negative to say about this book. It just wasn't my favorite in comparison to his other work. In 15th, I have Vladimir by Julia May Jonas. I read this one recently. It did take me kind of a while to read, so this wasn't one that I was picking up every step of the way. Like, I'm so interested. This story is written from the perspective of a wife. Her and her husband are both professors at this college, and it is focusing on him being caught hooking up with his students, the general outrage and downfall that comes from that, people expecting her to go against him rather than stand by him. Meanwhile, she has a crush on this other professor called Vladimir. Whatever. I liked some of the storylines in here, others not so much. The wife, the narrator, is almost completely unlikable, so that made it a little bit harder to read. I do like an unlikable narrator. I do like when the main character is sort of the fucking worst. She was just kind of the worst, but also not very dynamic or interesting to me. So I liked it, but not that much. In 14th, I've got Happy Hour by Marlo Granados. This was a fun, pointless book, and I loved it. This is a book about some besties trying to make it work for themselves in New York City, just trying to make rent money. That's literally it. That's the whole book. If you like a book with very little plot, just vibes, this could be the one for you. We're done with stack number 1, baby. And the last book that I have here is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. This is a very poetic novel. It is a bunch of letters written from a son to a mother who can't read. It is so emotional and so beautifully written. This, I feel like, is probably the most accomplished book that I read this year. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for. I just think that the writing in here is fucking fantastic. All right, now we're getting to my top 12 books. So these are my favorites from the year. In 12th place, I have Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. This is another one of those books that is mostly vibes, little plot, but it was really fun, and I liked this one better than Normal People. Normal People gets so much fucking hype, and to be honest, I find Connell so completely and utterly unbearable that it was fine. But it's so funny. I bring this up every time I see something about it because the amount of times I've seen people on the internet be like, Marianne and Connell, like, I love them, Connell King Bay. What the fuck are you guys on about? What did you read? Because it wasn't the same book that I read. Connell fucking sucks. So anyways, I read Normal People like a year and a half ago, and to this day it still fires me up. So I loved this one a lot more because I found the characters a lot more bearable than Connell. In 11th place, I have The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This book is so fun. Who doesn't love a little enemies to lovers story? She's the maid of honor. He's the best man, and they fucking hate each other. And then, oh no, tragedy strikes at this wedding, and everybody gets food poisoning except the two of them because they're vegetarian or something, I forget. And they have a non-refundable honeymoon. So the bride and groom were like, you have to go. You guys just have to go to take advantage of this. And they were like, I have to take a free vacation, but I fucking hate him. Come on. It's so good. It's so stupid, but it's so good. This was hot. This book was romantic and stupid and fun and sexy, and I loved every fucking minute of it. In 10th place, I have Night Sky with Exit Wounds by Ocean Vuong. Again, this is a collection of poetry by Ocean, and I absolutely loved this collection. I feel very attached to Ocean's writing. I think we see the world in similar ways. We value similar things. So his writing just really, it resonates with me. It hits me. This collection is so beautiful, so gorgeous, and I highly recommend it. In 9th place, I have Bargain Bin Rom-Com by my dear friend and fellow YouTuber Lena Norms. Cover is gorgeous, the writing is incredible, and Lena is truly such a gem of a human being. I was so excited to finally get my hands on her book of poetry. I remember when she announced it being like, oh, I'm ready, baby. I just think that Lena is so whimsical and fun and smart, and this book just seems to reflect all of the things that I already felt about her. It's beautiful. Highly recommend. In 8th place, I have I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Me, along with every other person who read this book, absolutely loved it. It's a very difficult story. It's very upsetting. We've been having conversations about like child exploitation in the media industry, Dan Schneider and how fucking creepy he is, and just like parents exploiting their kids in general. I think we have it a lot over on YouTube because family channels need to be fucking regulated. What the fuck is going on? These are conversations that are ongoing, especially on the internet, but I think so rarely do we get a first-hand account from someone who went through it, especially a Nickelodeon star that went through it. It's so rare that you actually hear these child stars on major networks like Disney and Nick actually speak up in very in-depth personal ways. I think Jeanette was so fucking brave for publishing this book. This is deeply personal, deeply vulnerable, and I mean, I think this was like a must read this year. In 7th place, I have 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This was one of my favorite romance novels of the year. I thought this book was incredible. 7 days to fall in love, 15 years to forget, and 7 days to get it all back again, baby. It's about these two writers who had like a whirlwind romance when they were kids, and they ended up being broken apart from each other for reasons they don't know until they're reconnected. I'm trying not to give away the book while I'm talking about it, but they both end up becoming writers later on in life. They're at this literary conference. They end up crossing paths again. Bada bing, bada boom. Sparks fly. The story writes itself, people. I loved it. It was so good. In 6th place, I have Once They Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaughey. I took the cover off this book, which I now regret, but it was pissing me off so much when I was reading it. I actually read this book because of Lena Norms, who I just mentioned before this. I went on her channel on her No Books on a Dead Planet series, and we talked about this book and the planet and climate change. Lena had recommended this book when she asked me to come on that series on her channel, and this was very outside of the realm of what I normally would have picked up myself, but it ended up being one of my favorite books of the year. The writing is super poetic and beautiful, and I felt like it kind of gave me everything that I wanted out of a novel. There's murder, there's there's mystery, there's drama, there's romance, there's sisterhood, there's fucking everything. It's focused on these two sisters that moved to Scotland because one of them is helping to heal the dying landscape by reintroducing wolves to the area, and the townspeople are very mad about this. And then somebody ends up dead and they blame the wolves and drama ensues. So there's lots of fucking drama. And there's a side little romance plot, and we get so much beautiful moments between the two sisters, our main characters. So I just felt like there was so much to love about this book. It was so dynamic. It was so like packed that I was shocked that this ended up being one of my favorite books of the year, because I definitely would never have picked this up myself. Also would recommend this one if you're looking to get back into reading. In 5th place, we've entered our top 5, baby. I have Crying in H Mart by Michelle's Honor. This book is all about Michelle's relationship with her mother in combination with the fact that her mother is dying of cancer. I really loved the way that Michelle wrote about her mom, because she captured how truly complicated mother-daughter relationships can be. And I think she articulated very well the areas in which her mother fell short, while also showing such a deep love and admiration for her mother. And I really loved how she was able to capture that nuance of like being able to criticize someone or see the faults in someone, but also loving them so deeply, and needing them in your life, even if your relationship with them is complicated. And I just loved it. In 4th place, I've got Stag's Leap by Sharon Olds. Sharon Olds is another one of my favorite poets. I love a lot of Sharon's writing. This was a new favorite of mine. I'd never read this collection. Highly recommend. In 3rd place, I have Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Last year, my favorite book of the year was Beach Read by Emily Henry. I think she's a fabulous romance writer. Another enemies to lovers, because I love an enemies to lovers story. I always read these books and I'm like, I wonder what other people see inside their heads when they're reading about these characters. And in my head, the male lead in this book looked exactly like Bill Skarsgård. Tell me I'm wrong, because in my head, he looked like Bill Skarsgård. In 2nd place, I have The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Obviously, everyone who read this book this year fucking loved it, and with good reason. It is an incredible book. I think, obviously, this is another one of those books where if you're looking to get into reading, this could absolutely be your book. I think above everything else, this is the one that I would recommend for like trying to kickstart an interest in reading again. It's Evelyn Hugo talking to a reporter, telling the story of her life, separated into the chapters of her 7 husbands. It is glorious. It is beautiful. Highly recommend. And last but certainly not least, my favorite book of the year, Writers and Lovers by Lily King. I'm just going to read you the back because this is going to summarize it better than I can. Blindsided by her mother's sudden death and wrecked by a recent love affair, 31-year-old Casey Peabody has arrived in Cambridge, Massachusetts in the summer of 1997 without a plan beyond a determination to live a creative life. Written with King's trademark humor, heart, and intelligence, this is a transfixing novel that explores artistic passion, ambition, and the terrifying and exhilarating leap between the end of one phase of life and the beginning of another. Writers and Lovers is an unforgettable portrait of an artist as a young woman. I just got chills. This follows a story of one young woman dealing with grief after the loss of her mother and trying to find her footing, get her next novel finished, get it picked up, and maybe find love in the process. It was very relatable. Not to use that word, that dreaded fucking word, but it was. I think if you're someone in your 20s, 30s, trying to figure it out, trying to find success for yourself, dealing with complicated emotions of grief and grieving people that you've lost, sections of your life that are going by you, while also trying to build something for your future and perhaps find love along the way, you're gonna love this book. It was perfect. It was amazing. I fucking recommend it. It was my favorite book of the year. And that's it. We did it. Those are all the books I read this year, which thank God I didn't read more because I just talked for a very long time. I've been recording for over an hour. Be sure to listen to my podcast if you don't, because we have so much fun over on Emotionally Online. And I am, as a reminder, taking a break end of December through mid-January. So if you miss me during those times and you're thinking, what am I gonna do? I have several hours of content over on my podcast that I'm sure some of you have not been listening to, and it's really fucking good. If you like these videos, you're gonna like the podcast, I promise. Also, be sure to follow me on Instagram if you haven't already. And that's it. That's where we are. That's where we're going to be. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.